All right guys, I did not plan on making this video, but you asked for it, so here it is. Why did I choose the 250F over the CRF300L? I get a lot of hate comments on the channel about switching bikes up so much and how he can never make up his mind, when in reality, I like trying new things and I'm in a position where I can do so and share my experiences with the world. So getting back on track, what led me to get rid of the 300L? Well, I made a full video on that, and what ruined it for me was this environment right here. So flashing back, when the 300L was announced, I was super excited. I knew I had to have one, so I put a deposit, and thanks to Honda Marysville, I was one of the first few people on the platform to get a 300L, and we made a lot of content with it. The first 3-4 months, I absolutely loved it because I was riding it as a dual sport. And for those of you that don't want to waste your time, ultimately that is the reason why I parted ways with that bike. It's because it's a dual sport and I was trying to do too many dirt bike things on it. And that's where the key difference is that I thought was pretty obvious. The CRF250F is a dirt bike. It's in the dirt bike lineup. It has dirt bike parts on it and it acts like a dirt bike. The CRF300L is a dual sport. It's in the name. It's meant to be ridden on the street, but can be ridden off-road. Now I managed to do a lot of crazy things on the 250L and the 300L, so I'm not saying that you can't do it on that bike, but why do we ride bikes in the first place? It's to have fun, and some of those things just are not fun to do on those bigger, heavier bikes. And really, no matter what you do to the 300L, it's still gonna be almost 50 pounds heavier than this bike right here. With the riding that I like to do, it just doesn't make sense for me to be carrying around that extra 50 pounds. It's a huge handicap off-road, and I like to ride the single track. I like to ride the gnarly stuff. I like to do hard enduro, and I wanted a bike that I could really do it all. And I thought the 300L was the answer, but no, it is this thing right here. Guys, I absolutely love this platform. I've already made several videos ranting and raving about this bike, so I'll try to keep this a comparison video. But like I said, this thing is a tried and true dirt bike. This is the successor to the legendary CRF250F. It is a air-cooled thumper. Does it make tons of power? No. But for what I like to do, I don't need all that power. As long as it can lug me up a gnarly hill in first and second gear, that's all I need, and it does it beautifully. This bike is super easy to ride, and it's a great beginner bike, but it can also be a great bike for the experienced rider such as myself. Thankfully, there are people like Scott over at Hyperlight and Bruce that allow you to transform these bikes into really capable enduro machines. It just so happens that I live in a state where these are super easy to make street legal as well. Moving back to the 300L, there were only a few times where I found myself on the highway trying to maintain 80 miles an hour, and it's not fun. But that is where the 300L shines, is on the road. If you look at the 300L, it is derived from the CBR. It just is. It uses virtually the same engine from the CB300 chassis, and that's not a bad thing. It's a great engine, but it likes to be revved high and doesn't like to be ridden slow. So the next biggest question that I get asked is, why didn't I mod the 300L further? Why didn't I do the suspension? Why didn't I do the full Jake the Garden Snake build? And I already answered that. It's because you just can't get rid of the weight. No matter what you do, it is still gonna be an overweight dual sport at the end of the day. And for some people, that's not a bad thing. Like I said, it just really depends on how you ride. And a lot of people that make these comments, they don't really watch the channel and understand what I'm trying to do, and also the fact that I can only have one bike on the road. The goal from here on out is to spend almost half of the year on the road traveling, and I just have the space for one bike. That might change in the future, but I really need one bike that can do it all, and this fits the bill. Is it the most comfortable thing to ride as a dual sport? No. This thing is screaming at 65 miles an hour, and you don't want to do it for too long. But this thing is really fun once you get into the twisties and just cruising through a small town and exploring. So if you want a bike that can go comfortably down the road, I would definitely suggest the 300 over this. But if you're mainly riding trails, you want to upgrade it, do some gnarlier riding, this is a way better option. Do I miss the 300L? Not really, not in the slightest, because like I said, I only found myself using that sixth gear and the higher RPMs a handful of times, but I spent way more time struggling to carry the weight of that bike and just the lackluster suspension off-road. So a brief mention, let's talk about the KTM and Husqvarna 350, because that's what we got after selling the 300L and the 250L. Don't get me wrong, those are fantastic bikes. I loved them. As soon as I got back to Ohio and started riding with the hard enduro guys, I was itching to get a two-stroke again, so I ended up selling it off. Those bikes just require too much maintenance for me on the road. I like to have the peace of mind of something so rudimentary, an air-cooled thumper. It just doesn't get more reliable than this, and that's why I've always liked these Honda bikes. The 450L, I felt really good about the reliability of that bike, but once again, it was just too heavy and too much unusable power. So even for somebody like me that can ride pretty decent, I have a blast on these bikes, and say what you want, you will never know until you hop on this thing, especially with everything that I've done. Come out here and ride some of this stuff, you'll be like, wow, this thing just makes sense. I recently had my cousin out here and I let him ride this bike and he's like, holy crap, dude. Because he's in the market for a bike and he's like, with my size, I thought I needed a 450, and that's just not the case. A lot of the times, ego gets in the way and somebody's just like, I don't want to ride that. It's a wimpy little 250, this, that, and the other. Come out and ride, man. I would love to see you ride against this thing on whatever bike. It can keep up with the best of them. It can do damn near just as good with the suspension mods that I've done. And I don't want to bite myself in the ass for saying this, but this bike is a keeper. The cost of entry on one of these bikes is super low. In the used market, you can get them for around $4 grand. And with the mods that I've done, I'll do a full video on this later, but I have close to $5,500 invested. So for the versatility that you get, the performance that you get, for that amount of money, I find that hard to beat. I'm really looking forward to seeing what's next for these bikes and whether more companies will start giving it recognition. I just gotta mention Scott once again at Hyperlite. If you're looking for any parts for this bike, go ahead and check out his website. He is a one-stop shop. Bruce Triplett, obviously, if you want the suspension done, he is the guy to get these bikes dialed. I'll have another suspension video at some point just talking about how much I love this setup. I still need to get a Vapor Trail Tech so I can track my odometer and service intervals, but I've probably ridden almost 1,000 miles and I have loved every bit of it. No issues with the bike. Damn, bud. No issues with the bike whatsoever. Not burning any oil, and I have done some longer stretches on the road pinned. Not recommended, but sometimes you gotta do it. And I'm really just happy that I chose to go this route and I'm not missing anything. Is this gonna be my only bike forever? Well, it's already not. I still have the KDX 200 back home and a handful of other bikes. I am gonna get another 300 two-stroke at some point. I don't know whether it's gonna be this season or not, but there are some things that you can't replace, and those things are still the king on the single track. I might play around with the gearing at some point. I am still running stock, which is good for the road, but I do find myself wanting a tractor a little bit more off-road. Apart from that, I have another box from Hyperlite with some really awesome parts that we're gonna be trying out, so stay tuned for that video. I'm also gonna make a couple buyer's guide videos for not only dual sports, but I think I'm gonna do dirt bikes as well. That way, if you're new and you have no idea what you want, you can kind of narrow it down. I know you've seen a lot of Hondas on the channel, but I am by no means brand specific. They just happen to make really good, reliable bikes. And reliability is definitely something that matters to me out here on the road in these remote locations. So I definitely don't see myself ever owning another 300L. I would like to try a KTM 500 or FE 501 someday, but I think I would rather just clear up some space and be able to have this and a 300 two-stroke. A lot of people though that have that 500 really do believe that it is the one-stop shop, the do-it-all bike, and I think I would be happy with it, but once again, the cost to entry, the service, it's just so much more than a bike like this. So just try to envision what you're actually gonna be doing and the kind of riding. Are you gonna spend most of the time on the street with a little bit of light trail use, or are you mainly gonna be riding trails with a little bit of street? But if you made it this far in the video, thank you for the support. Consider hitting that like button, subscribe if you're new, and drop it down in the comments what videos you'd like to see next. Links to all of the parts on this bike and products that I use will be down in the description, so check that out as well. That's gonna wrap up today's video. Always remember to live free and adventure daily.